Let's do it, man. The one that everyone's been waiting for.
Man, we got some people in here already. Shout out to Dan. Shout out Teef. Shout out to Indo, who said he's tuning in from Punjab. It's our first ever viewer from another country. That's amazing. Shout out Indo, bro.
Yeah.
Oh man, bro, we got so much to talk about today. So
It
much
just
to talk about.
just feels like it's been like that almost every single week this year, man. It just feels like it.
But there's good news, I feel like, today. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
some news that's kind of like, I guess, 50-50, kind of in the gray, but definitely a lot to dissect from that press conference today from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch.
For sure, 100%. I mean, definitely a lot of positives are taken out of that. Obviously, the accountability thing. A lot of people are kind of pissed off that it took them this long to kind of take accountability on some of the things, including the defensive lapses. Obviously, we saw the firings, today. Guys that Shanahan was sticking up for a month ago are not even here anymore. So yeah, there's a lot that we got to discuss tonight, buddy. That's for sure.
Man, we called that a month ago or whenever it was, 5-6 weeks ago when Kyle Shanahan said Nick Sorensen is his guy and he's doing a good job. We knew that was a bluff.
100%. Yeah, I mean, we were calling it like as soon as we heard it, and like you said, it was just lip service, right? That was just the proper media answer to give at the time, because there were still 4 games left in the season at that time when the media started asking all these questions about, do you believe in Sorensen? Do you believe in Schneider? Like, do you believe like this team can, as constructed, be successful? And the press conference today with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan kind of told us that no, like, we were not happy with Schneider's performance. We were not happy with Sorensen's performance. We're not happy with our defense. We're not happy with how many injuries we had this season and all the personal stuff that we had go through, right? We're not happy that we're getting questioned that we don't know about special teams or scheme or anything like that. Like, there was a lot of spicy stuff that happened in that press conference, but it was all for good things, hopefully, that are to come, these next 9 to 10 months.
Yeah, there was a lot that they talked about today. We'll circle back to Nick Sorensen in a second, but let's start with the biggest news I think of the day was Kyle Shanahan promoting Klay Kubiak to offensive coordinator. This was honestly caught me by surprise. I mean, we've talked on this show for probably about a month or so now that if not all season that Kyle Shanahan should look into getting an offensive coordinator for next season. We talked about maybe some names that they could have brought in, but then we always kept coming back to the fact that Shanahan has this ego and he's probably not going to go hire an offensive coordinator, right? Because he wants to be in control of the offense and the play calling. And while he's still going to be in control of the play calling, Klay Kubiak is definitely going to have his hand in the offensive game from now on. For those who don't know, Klay Kubiak, he was the passing game coordinator in 2024 this past season. Before that, he spent 2022 and 2023 as the assistant quarterbacks coach. So he worked with Brock Purdy a lot over the last few years. 2021, he spent 1 season as the defensive quality control coach. So he's been with the Niners organization for 4 or 5 years now. And this year the Niners ranked 5th in passing yards per game, 249, yards a week. So he's earned his position. And this past week against Arizona, even though the Niners, took the L, Shanahan did allow Kubiak to call some plays here and there. Yeah. So we got a little bit of a taste of what it's going to be like. And now we'll see. The Niners need to change up their scheme a bit on offense. It's something you've talked about all season. So what do you think about this move today with the Niners hiring or promoting Klay Kubiak?
Yeah, I think that this is a move that is warranted for sure. It kind of feels like the Mike McDaniel situation that we had like a couple of years ago, where he was kind of like an OC, but he wasn't really an OC because Kyle was still calling the plays. I kind of see Kubiak as one of those dudes that is going to be what, Eric Bieniemy was to Andy Reid for all those years, where he's a guy that stands next to Kyle or is in Kyle's ear like constantly during the game. He's giving suggestions on what plays should be called in situational football, obviously. I feel like Kyle sometimes has a lot going through his mind, and he might try to execute a play that, is, a 50-50 proposition at best in a very critical situation. And I feel like, if you have someone next to you that's kind of like in your ear saying like, hey, like, I think we should go with this. I think we should go with that. which is kind of like what this sounds like, right? And I think Kyle Shanahan probably had a talk with John Lynch and Jed York, just like we were saying, 2-3 weeks ago when we met in person and talked about this, right? For God knows like how many hours we talked about this over the past couple of weeks, right? But
yep.
I told you, I was like, he needs an OC. He needs a guy that can actually draw things up in critical situations, in critical third down, fourth down situations, fourth quarter situations, especially. We know Kyle Shanahan's not good in the fourth quarter. And I feel like that this move that they made today to officially announce that they would be promoting him to OC, I could tell Kyle was kind of hesitant to say that he's promoting him to OC. I could see the look on his face when he said, like, he's going to be the OC.
Mm-hmm.
But then he followed it up with, I'm still going to call the plays, which tells me that this is a situation where, Jed York and John Lynch got with Kyle and said, hey, you need help. And
yeah, I was about to ask, you think this was more of a Shanahan thing, or is this more like a front office
100%.
Lynch thing,
We know Kyle Shanahan's ego, bro. He's not going to just relinquish something this big, right? He is the offense, right? That's what he thinks. Mm-hmm. He thinks he's the innovative caller, he's the genius, all this kind of stuff. And credit to him, he's had a lot of successful seasons in San Francisco that got us to the Super Bowl. But I don't think he has the ability to dial up plays in certain circumstantial situations. Fourth quarter in the Super Bowl, right? Fourth quarter in the NFC Championship. Like, what are you going to do, right? What's your game plan at that moment when shit is hitting the fan, like it did in so many of these playoff games in the last 5 years? So that's why I think that it was really critical to get someone that has been around the organization. It's a guy that he likes to work with, right? It seems like they have a really good relationship. He was kind of glowing about the relationship during the offseason too, when the media asked like, oh, you like Klay Kubiak call the plays, and he's like, yeah, just to like switch it up, give him a chance to kind of show what he can do. And it showed on Sunday when he got the job, right? Obviously on Sunday, basically he was the OC after that.
Yeah,
he put up over 450 yards of offense. So and they did it with mainly their backups. Now granted, it was a meaningless game. Arizona's not really playing anybody on defense.
But it doesn't matter. Like you said, they did it with our backups, right?
Yeah, 100%. We did it with our backup quarterback, with our backup receivers, with backup offensive linemen, with our fifth string running back. If you're still producing points, if you're still putting up 27 points in that situation, I like our chances of winning for sure. So, this is definitely a big W. I think that this is a very underrated move that we're probably going to be talking about next year when we have a more successful season.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in right now. This is a deep dive. We got a lot of 49er news to talk about today. There was a press conference with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, kind of their year-end, exit interviews and whatnot. And we're going to talk about Deebo Samuel. We're going to talk about Dre Greenlaw, Brock Purdy, defensive coordinator, who's going to be next potentially. So we're going to get into everything. So make sure you guys stick around. But, I think what you said is true. It's going to be good for Shanahan to have a second set of eyes right by him during the games, because sometimes maybe Kubiak will see something that Shanahan doesn't see in a defensive coverage, switch up a play call, give him a suggestion. Hey, let's run a jet sweep here, or let's go to Pearsall here, whatever it is, right? Having somebody next to you, like you mentioned before when we were texting earlier today, how kind of Andy Reid, has his guys with him and helping him out, right? Even though Andy Reid is the guy that calls the plays at the end of the day, he still has guys around him that let him know about whether certain schemes or certain coverages they should switch up their play call, right? So we'll see. I think it's a good step forward. It's something hopefully that'll help the 49ers next year, as they get healthy, get their guys back and look to revamp in 2025, turn things around, right? It's something like I said, we've been wanting this, for them to get an offensive coordinator. And I think it's good that they hired someone internal who's been not only with the organization, but productive with the organization for the last 4 or 5 years. So, definitely a good move on the 49ers, and we'll see what happens. Let's talk about the defensive side now, because Nick Sorensen, he was demoted as a defensive coordinator. This is something all 49er fans have been calling for. It's not to say that Sorensen is a terrible defensive coordinator, but he's not a good one either. He's kind of just average. And for this 49ers team, average doesn't cut it, because we know what this team is built for. It's built to win a Super Bowl, been to the Super Bowl a couple times in the last 5 years, NFC Championship a handful of times. You can't have an average defense and expect to win a Super Bowl in this NFL, So we were worried about whether the Niners would actually demote or get rid of Nick Sorensen, and ultimately they made the decision to. It looks like he's still going to be with the coaching staff, which is fine. They might they're going to interview him for their special teams role, which is I think good. But we definitely need a new defensive coordinator on this team, because Kyle Shanahan talked about it too, how teams are figuring out their schemes and they need to adjust and come up with new schemes. And so they're going to start looking in another direction. And the big name, obviously, we're all talking about and hoping for is Robert Saleh, right?
Yep.
ESPN reporter Josina Anderson reported that the Niners are expecting to make an offer to Robert Saleh. Whether he'll accept that offer is going to be tough because Saleh is also interviewing for the Jaguars head coaching role. And the Jaguars GM is Trent Baalke, right? Former 49ers guy. So, he's going to be pushing hard. It's just a matter of whether Saleh wants that job or not, right? The Jaguars are not that well-run of an organization. They had an awkward press conference. I don't know if you saw it with their owner, Shaw or whatever his name is. Khan, right?
Yeah, Shad Khan.
Khan. Yeah, he kind of had an awkward moment there with Trent Baalke, and they've gone through a few coaches now in the last couple of years. So who knows if Saleh even wants that job? I mean, with the 49ers, everything is it's already there, right?
Yeah.
He was with this team for a handful of years, had a lot of success. So, hopefully he comes back. The Bengals fans are wanting Saleh as their defensive coordinator also, which, I mean, let's be honest, I think that would be great for the Bengals.
Super cool.
That's the one thing they're missing too over there is a good defense. So, selfishly, of course, we want him here. So we'll see if it happens or not. Brandon Staley is going to be interviewed for that position too. Although it's they said it's likely that the Niners are going to go with an external candidate. So Staley maybe will remain on staff, but I don't think he's going to get to that position. And a few other guys that are being linked to the 49ers. Gus Bradley, who's a former Jets defensive coordinator. Jeff Ulbrich, who's a current Jets interim head coach, but is likely to be – he's already been released, right, by them, or is going to be released.
Most likely going to be released since they're already interviewing candidates and he's not a prospective candidate.
Yeah, so he's a potential guy. While he's not a great head coach, he is a good defensive-minded guy, someone the Niners will definitely be open to. Joe Cullen, who is the Chiefs' defensive line coach, is expected to be linked to the Niners also. Al Golden, he's the Notre Dame defensive coordinator. And Notre Dame, for those who don't follow college football, is in the semifinals of the college football playoff. I think they have the number one defense in college football this year in terms of points allowed per game.
Yep.
So that's an interesting name that they're being attached to. Lou Anarumo, who's the former Bengals defensive coordinator. Is that the guy they just let go of?
They just let go of him because Cincinnati had a downer of a year.
Keep him away from this team. Keep him away because that defense was trash. Yeah. And the last guy who's also being linked to the 49ers, Navarro Bowman, the current linebackers coach for the Chargers, and obviously one of the all-time great 49ers linebackers, Navarro Bowman. So a good list of candidates there for the 49ers. I think, like I said, we all want Saleh through that door. But, first, what's your reaction to the Sorensen firing? And, what do you think about who should be the next guy?
It was the right move. Sorensen is a good guy, right? Like his press conferences, you can tell he cares about the game. He's a very, very, very knowledgeable coach. But I think the task that was given to him this season was way too big for him to handle as a first-time defensive coordinator. We would have been way better off with Steve Wilks. We probably would have made the playoffs if we still had Steve Wilks, albeit maybe a 9-8, 10-7 season. But we would have won that division this season for sure if Steve Wilks was still the defensive coordinator of this team. When I think about candidates of what they could prospectively be, to be honest, bro, I don't know if Robert Saleh is going to really move the needle for this team because...
Interesting. Why is that?
The way they were talking in the press conference, it kind of feels like they want to change things up. Like Robert Saleh, you're trying to kind of run the same scheme again. Now, obviously, like Saleh is a decorated defensive coordinator, right? But he had struggles his first year, too, as a San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator. First 2 years, actually, he was subpar, right? But when he got the superstar talent around him, starting in 2019 and, thereafter, they had, arguably the best defense in the NFL for, a good stretch there. And when DeMeco Ryans took over, obviously, he brought a different flavor. even though he was still an internal candidate, he still brought a different flavor and a different vibe that the 49ers kind of took like that next level. There was a lot of games where the defense won for them, in those 2021 and 2022 seasons when DeMeco was around. So I don't think Robert Saleh is going to be, as much as I would love to see him, I don't think he's going to be the answer, because they're going to want to change things up in terms of schematics. And if that means that they have to go with someone we've never heard of, right? That might be a situation that happens, right? We might not get a guy that's like decorated in NFL front offices or anything like that. It might be a situation, like you said, like we get the guy from Notre Dame that many people don't know about because they don't watch college football. It could be a guy like Navarro Bowman, right, who apparently has been doing wonders in the LA Chargers coaching staff, that's something I read up on today, is that he's been doing quite a good job. But
Bowman will be cool, but I don't know if he's like ready for a defensive coordinator role just yet, especially with a team contending for a Super Bowl, right? With Salah, I mean, look, decorated, like you said, sure, like the schemes might be of the past, but he's going to have to learn to adjust too. And I'm sure that conversation would be had with Shanahan, like, hey, well, we're going to implement some of the old schemes we used to use. We need to implement a lot of new ones as well.
100%.
You can't just run back the same thing from 3-4 years ago and expect different results. So, they're going to have that conversation for sure. I expect Salah. I mean, he's a smart guy, obviously very well liked by everyone in the organization, a player's coach to the max. We remember him on that sideline, fist bumping, chest bumping guys after a sack or an interception. And that's the kind of energy you need back on that sideline. And,
for sure,
it'd be great to have him back. But if he doesn't become available, or if the Niners, for whatever reason, didn't make an offer to him, I mean, getting somebody else through the door who has a different perspective, runs different schemes, sees things differently, I'm totally open to that. Definitely just want somebody with a proven track record.
Yeah.
And somebody who also isn't afraid to challenge Kyle Shanahan, right? And that's what you need, is somebody who's going to be able to stand up and be like, no, like we got to go with this. We got to blitz here, or let's just rush 4 here, whatever the case may be. They need somebody who's going to be able to put their foot down,
They need a tactician, bro. That's what they need. They don't necessarily need a guy that's like a player's coach, fucking fist bumping, like rubbing their heads and shit like that. Like, that's not what they need, right? They need someone that's like a full-on tactician that can relate with their players and, play to the player's strength, right? Like, what is Fred Warner good at? What is, Talanoa Hufanga good at? What is, Renardo Green good at, right? What are they most comfortable in what situations can you put them in to be successful, right? That's why DeMeco Ryans, I feel like, was the best defensive coordinator we ever had in the run that we've had the last 5 years, because that guy, he got the players, but he also understood the schematics and the tactical abilities of a defense, right? Now, granted, we were very blessed to have a very vaunted defense because we had young players on the defensive line, right? Nick Bosa, he had 19 and a half sacks the last time DeMeco Ryans was the defensive coordinator. So that's one thing that is going to be very, very important, is who can come in and unlock that defensive line, because that's where they've been struggling the last couple of years. Nick Bosa kind of looks like a shell of himself. And is it because he doesn't have enough help, or is it because of the way the schematics have been? That's what I'm really interested to know about the next guy that's coming in. How is he going to make Nick Bosa a double-digit sack getter again in the NFL?
Yeah, a lot of the comments here, I mean, Randy saying, I agree about Salah. I think he might have lost his edge as a coach. Maybe give Bowman a shot. Some people calling for Richard Sherman, Dante Whitner to come be part of this staff. Those would be some great guys to have, I think, as like maybe to their specific positions, right? Like secondary coaches and whatnot, or maybe defensive assistants. But, you definitely need somebody. Here's Sushel said, somebody on the defensive side, you need a coach that is headbutting players, hyping them up, right? That was the whole thing with Steve Wilkes, was up in the booth for half the season until he finally made the transition down, right? But we definitely need somebody's going to just come in and change things, and the good thing is there's guys out there. It's not like there's a limit of options right now. That was a problem last year, right? They tried to get some of these, they tried to swing for the big guys, notably Bill Belichick was a guy they tried to bring through the door. He said no. There was one or two other guys. And then when everyone kind of had taken other roles or just were interested for whatever reason, Nick Sorensen was just the guy they promoted to. He wasn't their first option, or their second, or their third.
Jeff Ulbrich was actually an option last season too, but then he took the assistant coach job with the Jets.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure this Niners job has to be appealing to a lot of coaches, right? Because you know what you're coming to. First of all, really well-run organization. Especially if you're coming from the Jets over to the 49ers. That's a night and day difference. But a team that's contending for a Super Bowl and a team that has talent on the defensive side, right? Nick Bosa's there. Fred Warner's there. This secondary is established now. You just need to draft and maybe sign a couple of pieces, right? We'll get into Dre Greenlaw potentially coming back, Hargrave potentially coming back. So the good thing is there's talent there that you can work with and also add to. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting as they go through this interview process now with some of these guys to see what direction the Niners go in. And once they make that hire, we'll definitely circle back in a week or two and discuss all that.
One other thing I wanted to point out for any defensive coordinator that's coming to the Niners, they're going to have the easiest strength of schedule going into next season, which means we have a 32nd place schedule in the NFL. We have a last place schedule essentially. So that's something that's really enticing. A guy can come in, do great things on defense, right? And possibly, build himself up for a head coaching gig somewhere else, right? Just dominate for a couple of years and just go coach somewhere else. So that also is an enticing proposition to get a promotion somewhere else.
I mean, hopefully whatever guy comes in next, bro, is somebody who actually sticks around for 2-3 years because the Niners have lost a lot of great coaches on both sides of the ball the last few years. And we need some continuity, right? Because this is going to be the Niners, fourth, fifth defensive coordinator in the last handful of years.
Yep.
When you think about Salah, DeMeco Ryans, Steve Wilkes, Nick Sorensen, and now, it's going to be the fifth. So we need someone who's going to, stick around for a couple of years. To end those point in the comments, he said the D-line is weak. I can definitely agree with that. Linebacker is weak besides Warner. Hopefully Dre comes back and our safeties are mid. I don't know. I think Malik Mustafa was a home run of a pick this year for the 49ers. And I would like to see them bring Hufanga back for one more year. And if he can stay healthy, I think we're really good at safety with those two guys. Jair Brown, I talked about him a couple weeks ago, regressed this year a little bit. So I think I would like to see them bring Hufanga back. I don't imagine it would cost a lot given his injury history and everything.
Yeah.
So linebacker is definitely something they got to look at. And then D-line, of course, is the biggest area of need for the 49ers on defense. So with that being said, let's talk about the roster, roster updates today that Lynch and Shanahan talked about because, as you guys were talking about in the comments, Deebo Samuel is expected to be back next season. John Lynch said he has 1 year remaining on his deal and we want him back here. He's a good player and we don't let good players who also have good character go. So, I don't think I'm glad Deebo's going to be back, even though we had talked about it looked like he was potentially going to be gone because they restructured his contract. It'll definitely be good to see Deebo back out there. And Trent Williams is expected to be back next season too. He missed the last 7 games with, the ankle injury, but Lynch said that he spoke with Trent and all intention is that he's going to be back next season. Javon Hargrave, they're going to release him after the June 1st designation, but there's a chance that they bring him back on a more team-friendly contract, depending on what his market is, around the league. So there's a potential that he comes back after they release him. So it'll be he still has like a little bit of a cap hit, but it's not as bad as it was before after they release him.
I think they saved $12 million in cap space by cutting him. And it's going to be $8 million cap hit this year. Next year, it's a little bit worse. It's going to be $25 million. But I think there's a way that they can stretch it out over a few years period if they come to an agreement on a new contract with him. So they're going to save about $12 million in cap space once they cut him post June 1st. That most likely is going to be held for the rookies that they need to sign during the summertime. So that's where that $12 million is going to come into play because obviously NFL free agency is before the draft, not after the draft. So it's going to be really interesting to see, what moves that they make, leading up to the draft, obviously, and then how they spread that money out. Obviously, Brock Purdy's contract is looming, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah. Tristan said, bring DeForest Buckner back. Yeah, that'd be amazing. If you can bring Defoe back, trade. What do you think it would take for Defoe? Maybe like a 4th or 5th rounder?
I would say between 3 to 5. One of those picks, depending on what they value DeForest Buckner at, depending on what the Colts are trying to do, right? And depends how desperate the Niners are. I know that they made calls to the Colts during the trade deadline to possibly get DeForest Buckner back, but the Colts stood pat. So I know that they're definitely going to be interested. He's on a 1-year deal essentially. He has one more year left on the current contract that he signed, and it would be awesome for guys like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner to get Defoe back.
Damn, get the band back together or what?
Yes, sir.
Everyone talking about Deebo. Look, yeah, Deebo definitely had, an up and down year. Obviously, I know he's been injury prone the last couple seasons, and his podcast this year on Bleacher, talking every week. Wasn't the best Deebo season for sure. But look, when Deebo is healthy, we saw what he's capable of, right? That Miami game late in the season, that's a Deebo we know. And I just think they got to stop using him as a running back, put him in position where he's going to succeed. These quick slants, screen plays where he gets the ball and just we get to see the yak, right? The physical play, yards after the catch, him picking up 20, 30 yards, those explosive plays that we were used to 2 seasons ago, when Deebo's finishing with 8 catches, 130 yards and a touchdown, right? And picking up a lot of those yards after the catch. So I think they got to be better about how they use Deebo, and that's how you keep Deebo on the field. You're using him as a running back. That's why he's out every 2-3 weeks, missing games. And, Deebo's no good to you when he's on the sideline. You need him out there. So,
yep.
1 year left on his contract. It'll be good to see him back out there. And hopefully with him, you just need to see him stay healthy. And, let's talk about Dre, though, man, because this is the big one, right? Everyone wants to see Dre back. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch both said they want him back. We saw the whole thing this week with Fred Warner's wife, right, posting something on social media that got everything kind of stirred up. But here's what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch had to say today about Dre Greenlaw.
We're doing everything in the world we can to bring Greenlaw back, and we're not into losing really good players who are unbelievable people. So we're going to do everything we can to never lose really good players who are good people. But that's also a very hard challenge, very hard. And that's something that you don't just talk about in one meeting. There's too many things that connect to that. Draft, free agency, roster, years, all that stuff. And that takes weeks, months to decide.
And I think the only thing I'd add to that, the communication with the players, what's most important. And I know I sat with Dre and always have great discussions with Dre. I know about his want to be here, and I know our want to have him here. And like Kyle said, there's realities and there's tough decisions and so many factors to all those things. But believe me, the desire on both sides is there.
Your reaction, what do you think? Because to me, look, I think Dre would love to be a 49er still. I think the Niners want him back too. But I agree with what both Shanahan and Lynch are saying there. There's going to have to be discussions, right? There's a lot of things they got to figure out. And I was listening to, I think it was KNBR yesterday, and they were talking about Dre. Fred Warner is already one of the highest paid linebackers, if not the highest paid linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah.
Paying another linebacker $12, $13, $14 million for, even if it's for one season, is hard to do. And they reference how the Ravens had to let Patrick Queen walk, right? Because they paid Roquan Smith top money at his position. So it's hard to pay multiple guys at the same position top money. And it's going to be a discussion, but it's just a matter of what's that number going to be. It'll probably be a 1-year deal, but we know there's a lot of contracts looming, obviously with Brock Purdy in particular.
For sure. I mean, my initial reaction, obviously seeing all the stuff that you saw, right, that I saw, this past week, it kind of does feel like goodbye for Dre Greenlaw. And it sucks because I feel like he is like the heartbeat of that defense. But whatever happened this season was not just because Dre Greenlaw wasn't there. It was kind of like a microcosm of their entire defensive, force that they have, right? It was a bad defensive coordinator, right? It was bad scheme. It was guys that were elite the year before that were missing tackles and missing sacks. Right? Like Dre Greenlaw coming in doesn't fix everything for the 49ers, right? So does it make sense for them to drop between $14 to $16 million a year over 4 years, for Dre Greenlaw? I don't think so. They have resources for sure, but they don't have enough resources to re-sign everybody if it's not a team-friendly deal. And I know they want Dre Greenlaw back. I want Dre Greenlaw back. I know what he provides to the team, but the injury that he suffered really serious, man. And we saw in one half what a big difference he made.
Mhm.
But when we didn't have him in there, right, which is a possibility that can happen next season too, something can happen where he gets injured or his calf tightens up. He misses 4 games. What are the Niners going to do then, right?
Yeah.
They have to have a contingency plan right now, which Kyle Shanahan basically said. He's like, I'm not ruling it out, but we haven't gone through free agency yet. We haven't gone through the draft yet, right? So we can't really make these decisions until we go through that process. Let's say they find someone in the 3rd round of the draft that's equally as good as Dre Greenlaw, someone that's comparable to Fred Warner, right? Or can blossom into Fred Warner, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, Fred Warner was a 3rd round pick. Dre Greenlaw was a 5th round pick. These guys were not, high picks or anything like that. So I think from a franchise's perspective, they're going to look at every single option this offseason to bring in a different linebacker next to Fred Warner if Dre Greenlaw's number, can't be met.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, like I said, a discussion that they're going to have. It's going to be a tough one. Dre on the open market could demand top money because there's not many Dre Greenlaws out there, if any at all. Like you said, we saw that one half against the Rams, the impact that he had. I think he was a leading tackler up until halftime, right? So it was a night and day difference with him out there next to Fred, but it's a luxury to have those 2 guys. And it just, sucks that things went the way they did in the Super Bowl for Dre and ended up costing him this entire season. The good thing is if he does come back with the Niners next year, he has the whole offseason to rehab now, right, and get healthy, get his Achilles and his calf back to 100%. It just can the Niners afford to pay him or not? And is he willing to take a bit of a pay cut maybe from elsewhere to come back to the Niners for one more year, at one more run at the Super Bowl? So we'll see. The good thing is the Niners do want him back. I'm sure Dre wants to be back. It just, can they? Because at the end of the day, it's a business too. It all comes down to money, and that's going to be the ultimate deciding factor.
That's why you got to win when you got to win, man.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that. All right. Let's keep it a little positive over here. So I want to talk about this too, Randy. Randy's question. What can you guys talk about Travarius Ward's future as well?
Yeah.
Travarius Ward, last week after the game spoke to media too, and they asked him about his offseason plans and whether he wants to be back. And, with Mooney, it's tough, man, because, he obviously lost a daughter last year, which is why he missed a few games due to, personal reasons. And he said it's been traumatizing for him and his wife to fly back to California just because of the, what happened to his daughter. And it just reminds them of that. So he said, while he would like to be back, it's not for certain because of what happened. It's going to be a discussion to be had too, right? We talked about this. We would love to see Mooney back for at least one more year. Yeah. He can still play, still a good, really good corner. And between him, Renardo Green, they're pretty good at the corner position. And and obviously Demo, right? Those 3 guys at corner, you're set, right? So it's just a matter of whether he wants to come back or not. I mean, he's from Texas, a Dallas guy. If he wants to stay in Texas, I mean, I would hate to see him in a Cowboys uniform, but I understand. Yeah, if he goes to Texans, that'd be great. D'Amico Ryan's over there. That's a team we can all root for, right? But at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for yourself and your family. So if he doesn't come back to the Niners, I don't think any of us can fault him. But I think all of us would love to see him back for one more year.
Yeah, for sure, man. I just don't see it happening, though. Watching that press conference again yesterday, you can tell that his heart's just not in the right place right now in terms of like what his future is, right? His heart's in a completely different place. We saw that on Sunday when he got burned by, Marvin Harrison Jr. That's not the Travarius Ward that we know. So there's a lot weighing on his mind. Obviously, there was a lot of things weighing on, Ricky Pearsall's mind, Trent Williams' mind. All these guys went through various things this past season, and the team feels the effects of that, right? When you don't have your star players out on the field, those guys are huge difference makers for us. But Travarius Ward, I think we've seen the last of him in a 49ers uniform. I think that's why he went out on Sunday. He didn't have any incentive to play in that game.
Yeah,
but I think he just wanted to give it one last go for the franchise because he wanted to be. He's thankful, right? He's thankful that he had the best years of his career. Literally, he was an All-Pro last season. with the 49ers, right? So he was amazing for the 49ers. I would love to see him again, but chances are that his heart and his mind are in a different place right now.
Yeah, again, everything comes down to money as well. And we know the Niners have a lot of decisions to make this offseason, a lot of key positions. So if they're unable to bring him back, it's not going to be a bad breakup by any means. It'll be a mutual decision. They'll talk it out and hopefully he's back. But if not, obviously we wish Trevarius Ward all the best. My dad said, how about Moody? Moody can get sentenced to prison in Siberia for all the kicks he missed this season. I don't want to hear the excuses of his high ankle sprain lingering and whatnot. If you're good enough, healthy enough to be out on the field, you're healthy enough to make kicks. There's no excuses, honestly. And him having missed 8 or 9 kicks since coming back from his injury is, unexcusable. So they haven't said anything yet about Moody being cut, but they did say they're gonna look into other options and have some tryouts. So don't be surprised if Moody is gone next season and not on this 49ers roster. So I think that's kind of all we need to say about him. Let's talk about the big fish now. Brock Purdy. This is going to be the big talking point all off season. Hopefully it's not a long contract negotiation. The Niners say they want to get this done ASAP, but you know how this goes with the 49ers. But here's Kyle Shanahan on Brock Purdy. He spoke about Purdy and his looming contract situation today.
Brock is the leader of our team. I've loved these 3 years with Brock. I plan on being with Brock here the whole time I'm here. So Brock's been a stud. He's a guy I got a lot of confidence in and just as a human. But it starts with what he's done on the field these last 2.5 years. And we're capable of winning a Super Bowl with him. We just almost did. And I know he's capable of getting the Niners Super Bowl in the future.
To everyone in the comments right now, I'm going to tell you right now, Brock Purdy is going to get paid. It's not going to be top of the market money, but he's going to get at least $50 million a year, somewhere between 50 to 55. It's going to happen. So when that notification comes through from Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport, whoever it is, Nick Wagner, don't be surprised. It's going to be, a contract in the ballpark of 5 years. Yeah. 250 mil or so, 260, something like that, with 130 to 140 guaranteed, whatever that number is. Brock Purdy is our guy. They're invested in him. Like Kyle Shanahan just said, they can win a Super Bowl with him. They almost just did it. Is Brock Purdy an elite quarterback? No, right? There's only a few of those in the league. But is he better than some of these guys who are getting top money like Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa? Yes, 100%. So when you look at what the market is, that's just what Brock Purdy's going to get. It's just a matter of what's that number going to be, how many years, and when is it going to get done? But the contract is coming. So yeah. What is your reaction to what Shanahan said about Purdy?
I mean, it's what I've been thinking about the last few weeks. He's getting paid. There's not been a 49ers quarterback that's been this successful in this system in the Kyle Shanahan era. You think they're just going to let him walk? You think they're not going to pay the guy, right? It's tough, right? It's tough as a fan because of the way his performance was this season. But there were a lot of different factors that went into it. And I don't want to hear about, if Patrick Mahomes was there or if Josh Allen was there. We don't know. We don't know. If those guys were there, maybe they would perform the exact same way. And maybe this team would have the exact same record. Maybe we would win maybe 1 or 2 more games because of their athleticism at most, right? But look at all the big money quarterbacks that are sitting at home right now. Like you said, Trevor, right? Tua, Joe Burrow is sitting at home right now, right? He's considered to be the MVP of the league, and his team couldn't get into the playoffs, right? And people don't want to blame Joe Burrow, right? They just want to blame his defense. I mean, why can't we blame the 49ers defense for not getting key stops this season?
Yeah.
They gave up 40 points to Detroit, right? They gave up 42 points to the Buffalo Bills. They gave up 40 points to the Green Bay Packers. People don't want to see those things, right? They just want to see Brock Purdy can't play in cold weather. Brock Purdy can't play in the snow. Brock Purdy can't play in rain. Those things, some of those things might be true, but we haven't seen the full product yet because he didn't have his full offensive line this season. He didn't have his starting running back all season. He didn't have his number 1 target in Brandon Ayuk, right? He had guys on the offensive line in and out of the lineup all season long, right?
Ricky Pearsall didn't get reps with him. Deebo missed a couple games. Kittle missed 1 or 2 games.
the craziest thing that I saw today, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle did not get one snap on the field together this season. Last year, they got, I think, like 90% of the snaps on the season together.
That's an insane stat.
And they didn't lose games when they had all 5 of those guys on the field, and they had Brock Purdy throwing the ball. So I don't want to hear this nonsense about not paying Purdy. He's going to get paid. If we don't pay him, someone else is going to give him $250 million. Some team like the Colts, the Browns, those teams are desperate. They need a quarterback, and they will pay top dollar for a quarterback like Brock Purdy who can run a system. He doesn't make mistakes, right? He's a bit of a gunslinger sometimes, but I think he's going to learn from his mistakes this season. He's going to know what his personnel are. Clint Kubiak is going to sit down with him. They're going to refine a couple of different things about obviously the offensive scheme and what he's comfortable with. We also talked about it today. The most interesting thing, these guys don't like to throw outside the numbers. That's going to be a new wrinkle that's going to be tossed into this offense this offseason. So I'm excited for that. But this nonsense that Brock Purdy's not going to get paid, he's going to be our quarterback for the future. There's literally nobody else out there. Who do you want? Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins? Like, there's literally nobody else.
One of the comments, PBabySF said, I think Joe Milton is better than Purdy and has a better arm, and he's throwing to nobodies for 50, 60 million. Look, Joe Milton played one game in his NFL career. It was a great game, but let's reel it back there a little bit, because a week ago everyone was talking about, do the Niners look at Sam Darnold and bring him in, bring him back to this team? It'll be a cheaper option. He's been thriving with Minnesota this year. Look what Sam Darnold just did on in the Vikings' biggest game of the season on Sunday Night Football. Lions defense has been average to below average this whole season, and Aaron Glenn drew up an amazing game plan to throw Sam Darnold off, and he had his worst game of the season. Sam Darnold hasn't proven anything yet.
No.
Regular seasons, he's been fantastic. Yes, best season he's had of his career. It's been great to see. But in the biggest game of the season, he played his worst game of the season, and now the playoffs are coming up. So we know what we're getting with Purdy. He's taken this team to an NFC championship. He's taken this team to a Super Bowl, right? Yes, he had some bad games this year. We all know that. You can go look at the box scores against, the Chiefs, against the Rams, Miami. He's had some interceptions, right? All that. We can definitely criticize him where it's due, but don't forget, like I said this last week on the show, Purdy started off the season really, really well. First 4 or 5 weeks was top 2, top 3 in passing yards per game. We saw him scrambling, extending plays with his legs. Had a good touchdown to interception ratio, and that's doing it with a subpar offensive line and missing guys. In the offense, Brandon Ayuk obviously got off to the slow start that he did, so we can't blame everything on Purdy. I think you and I have been very fairly critical, and also, giving him his credit where it was due this season. We've been on both sides of it, but ultimately we're both on the same page that Purdy is this guy. They can win with him, and I mean, don't forget what this guy just did a season ago. I mean, let me throw some of these numbers out to you guys in case you guys forgot. In 2023, Purdy, 4,280 passing yards. That's a single season franchise record for passing yards in a season. Don't forget some of the quarterbacks that have played for the 49ers, Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jeff Garcia. A caller today on the radio said that Brock Purdy is the best 49ers quarterback since Jeff Garcia. I think there's some very, very much some validity and truth to that. Alex Smith was...
You could even say he's the best quarterback since Steve Young.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to compare him and, to Jeff Garcia and give Purdy the edge, I mean, you can definitely make the argument. And for a guy who was the last pick in his draft class to be, to have the success that he's had with this organization is incredible. So, I mentioned the passing yards record last year. He also had a passer rating of 113, which was a single season franchise record. He was the first 49ers quarterback to throw for 30 or more touchdowns since 2001. That's 22 years that a 49ers quarterback has not thrown for 30 or more touchdowns. And yes, talent is great in the 49ers offense, but at the end of the day, you need someone who can deliver the ball to these guys on point with precision, right? Be able to make the reads, throw the deep ball, and it takes somebody with talent to be able to do that. I know you guys don't want to talk about Jimmy G right now and how bad he was, right? So if Jimmy G can get paid whatever the market commanded, Purdy can get paid what the market's going to command, because he's levels better than what Jimmy G is. And He's taken this team, like I said, to multiple deep postseason runs, and just this was just his third season in the NFL. Like,
the expectations are high, bro.
you know,
High when you succeed in the NFL, right? So it's like I said, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? It's like damn if you do, damn if you don't. But we've seen that this guy can perform when all the pieces around him are performing as well. Like, he didn't have an offensive line this season, right? Anytime he got protection, he made the right plays. He didn't make mistakes. Yeah, there were a couple of games where he threw some bad picks, right? Obviously, that's going to be on the quarterback for his decision making. But he was pressing a lot because he just wanted to will his team to a victory. He's not as athletic as Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, right? He's not going to have the biggest arm like all these other quarterbacks do. But what he does do is he doesn't make mistakes when he's not under duress, right? And people forget last year he had the number 1 QBR against the blitz. He was the best passer against the blitz last season. It's because he had all his horses, right? He had Trent Williams in the lineup for most of the year. He had George Kittle in the lineup for most of the year. Brandon Ayuk, which people were calling arguably a top 10 receiver last season after his performance. And Christian McCaffrey, obviously, he was the offensive player of the year. So all these things, in conjunction with how great Brock Purdy played, I bet you anything that if you gave Jimmy G the same team last season, he wouldn't have led them to the number 1 seed in the NFC. They probably still would have been a middling playoff team. So you got to give credit where credit's due. He's going to get paid. He is the best quarterback that we've seen probably in the last 30 years, even though we've had a lot of successful seasons with subpar quarterback play. But, I'm a big believer in him. You have to give him a shot for everything that he's done for the franchise, right? He basically took that hometown discount and carried the franchise for 2.5 years. So as far as I'm concerned, he's earned every penny, and the Niners just have to figure out how to maneuver and protect him.
Man, yeah, look, Purdy's a playmaker. When Jimmy G was our quarterback, every time he threw the ball, I was worried about, an interception. He's gonna throw a pick. He's setting guys up to get hit, right? He threw those hospital balls, as they call them, right? George Kittle suffered a lot of those from Jimmy G passes. And with Purdy, I don't have that feeling at all, because more often than not, he does make the right play. Yes, he might, have a sail a ball here or there, throws an interception, maybe forcing a throw, but he's also a risk taker. And at quarterback position, you need someone who's willing to take risks at times, because that's how you make big plays. Yes, he doesn't have the strongest arm in the league, but we saw was a couple weeks ago when he threw that deep ball to Ricky Pearsall that was nearly a touchdown, right? Yeah, if it's a little bit of a better ball, Pearsall walks in, but hey, to have a guy who can actually see that and get the ball down there is fantastic. So I mentioned the quarterbacks around the league who are making top money. Let me throw out some names for you guys. Jordan Love, $55 million a year right now. Trevor Lawrence, $55 a year. Tua, $53 a year. Jared Goff, $53 a year. Justin Herbert, almost $53. Jalen Hurts, $51. I mean, Kyler Murray's making $46.1 million. So if you don't think Purdy's going to get more than Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, the only thing Jalen Hurts does better than Brock Purdy is run the ball in from the 1 yard line. I mean, aside from that, I can make a case that everything Jalen Hurts can do, Purdy can do too. So Jared Goff, a veteran quarterback who has had some good regular season success, and he's turned the lines around. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't won anything yet in this league, right? And I mentioned Jordan Love. Jordan Love has a strong arm, but he was the league leader in interceptions, I think, last season. And he makes more mistakes than Purdy does with the ball. People are so high on him, Bro,
so, guys that have never been to the playoffs are getting paid, right? They've never even played in a playoff game are getting paid. You think Brock Purdy's just going to play on a fucking franchise tag on the last year of his deal after he's led a team to the NFC Championship and to the Super Bowl? There's no way. He has so much more value than all these other teams because Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch know he's the only one so far that's been able to run this scheme on offense to a T when everything else around him is intact, right? And, the front office didn't do him a lot of favors by not drafting O-linemen last year. Obviously, Dominic Pooney. Thank God we got Dominic Pooney. Otherwise, I don't think Brock Purdy would have been upright all season. He would have been scrambling for his life all season, right? They got a hit again on the left guard position, and they got a hit on the right tackle position. However they have to do it, whether they have to go through free agency, if they have to get a center through free agency. I know Ryan Kelly from the Colts is available, right? There's guys out there that can come and help from day one. So, guys that are nobodies are getting 45 to 50 million. Brock Purdy is a household name in the NFL now. He's been talked about probably as one of the most like controversial quarterbacks the last couple of years because people don't know, is he a superstar? Is he not a superstar? But he's always in the news for good or bad reasons, right? So it's just one of those situations where we know as Niner fans that he's been the one that's led us to the most success up until this point. And I feel like he can close the job. He can get the team over the hump, right? If everything goes the way it's supposed to go next season.
Yeah. I want to address some of these comments right here. Dan said, I'd take Kyler over Brock. No way, bro. I would not take Kyler over Brock. Look, Kyler, yes, dynamic quarterback, probably one of the fastest players at his position. He's beaten the Niners with his legs here and there over the years, but I mean, what has Kyler proven in this league? When Arizona signed him to that contract, they were hesitant about it too. They questioned his commitment to getting better to the game. I mean, you talk about Kyler Murray, we talk about a guy who's obsessed with Call of Duty and not getting better at his craft. So we know with Brock, he's a great locker room guy. He works. He's trying to get better. Guys like him. They respect him and everything. Talent wise, I mean, what does Kyler do better than Brock besides being he's got the speed? I'll give him that. But Brock's a mobile quarterback too. He makes plays with his legs. Arm talent. You could argue they're both right there about the same. I mean, so I wouldn't take Kyler over Brock. There's definitely some guys I would take over Brock, but Kyler's not one of them. Eli said, could we see Bosa getting traded? He doesn't seem to be a good locker room guy. I don't think so. Not at all. I don't think that's even like a question. I mean, there's never been reports about Bosa being a locker room cancer or guys not liking him. He's a quiet guy. Aside from when he's flashing his MAGA hat on TV, you don't hear from Bosa, right? He stays out of he's never one to be complained about from his teammates. They never talk bad about him. He never talks bad about anybody too. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy who just won Defensive Player of the Year a couple seasons ago. He regressed this season for sure. I mean, we all saw it, right? But I think you kind of talked about it earlier. A new defensive coordinator can hopefully get him back to the defensive player level that we've seen him before. So
for sure,
Bosa definitely not going anywhere. Jalen Hurts does have a great offensive line over there in Philly.
Probably the best O-line in the NFL.
Yeah. So like I said, only thing he does better is the tush push. That's the only thing he does better than Brock Purdy. So he's going to get paid. It's just a matter of, like I said, how much and everything. We know what the Niners' biggest needs are this offseason, right? Offensive line is something they have to bulk up. Defensive line, you got to bulk up and then figure out what you're going to do at the linebacker position next to Fred. I think those are the biggest things. George Kittle, there's a good chance he gets an extension, right? Fred Warner maybe gets an extension too. But the biggest needs for this 49ers team is in the trenches on both sides. I expect their first few picks to be either O-line or D-line guys, unless there's somebody that just really, really stands out to them at a different position. Expect them to be heavy on the offensive line and defensive line this year in the draft. This is a critical offseason for the 49ers, probably the biggest one they've had in a while, if not in the entire John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan era, right? Because you got to pay your franchise quarterback, and you're trying to revamp your team after going 6-11 this season, coming off a season in which you had just made the Super Bowl, right? And now your focus in the offseason is to get your guys healthy, your core guys, bring your core guys back that you want to bring back, bulk up the roster and get ready for next season. Because like you said, easiest schedule in the NFL, Super Bowl 60 next year is in Santa Clara. So if there's ever a time for you to go and get over the hump and finally bring Lombardi number 6 back to the Bay, it's next season. Eli said, I don't think there's enough pressure on Kyle. I think next season is when we're going to see it kick in because of all the factors I just mentioned, right? Easiest schedule. You're going to have high expectations coming off a disappointing year. And while this year, there's a lot of things you can attribute to this year, right? With whether it's the injuries, coaching staff being making some questionable decisions here and there. At the end of the day, I mean, the guys that are out there on the field got to execute. And we've been hard on Kyle Shanahan all season, right? And he definitely deserves some of the blame for things that have happened this year, but you can't blame him for everything, right? It's not his fault guys getting hurt. It's not his fault Brock Purdy is sailing a pass over Ricky Pearsall's head that lands right in the hands of Kirby Joseph. So, yes, Nick Sorensen was a bad hire, but again, that was limited options, I think, and Niners just had to kind of pivot to what they did. We were questioning whether they would let go of Sorensen, and I remember I texted you and I was like, if they don't fire Sorensen, this is an unserious team, right? And so it's good to see them. It was a relief to see them make that move, demoting Nick Sorensen. So we'll see, man. There's a lot that's going to happen over the next few weeks. Our uncle said, if I was a GM, find a center in the free agency or draft, offensive tackle, D-line. You need a guard, a linebacker, safety. I think, like I said, I think we're good with if they bring Huff back and Mustafa. They're solid. Running back and wide receiver. Yeah, I think we're pretty much good at those positions. I think they should bring in another tight end, draft a young tight end, in the draft too. Start planning for that post George Kittle era, and start using Kittle more as a receiver, not as much as a blocker. Right? You got to maximize Kittle's talent while you still have him here. So definitely a lot to go into the offseason, but definitely I think some good news today for the 49ers, promoting Klay Kubiak to offensive coordinator. Got a Klay back in the Bay. It's not Klay Thompson, but you got a Klay. It's Klay Kubiak. So all you Dubs fans, at least you got one Klay you can root for now. Nick Sorensen gone. We'll see what other changes they make here. We'll see who the defensive coordinator is. Dan said Huff is going to demand some top safety money. I don't think he will, because for the reason you just mentioned, Dan. I mean, coming off an ACL tear, right? He had some lingering injuries this year that he missed some games following his return from the ACL too. So I don't know if he's going to demand top money. We'll see, I guess, what the market is like. I mean, if he's gone, if somebody's willing to pay him more, maybe somebody will, overpay for some safety help. And if they do, I mean, it'd be a bummer to see him go. I do think they're going to need another safety next to Mustafa because, like I said, I don't think Jair Brown is the answer. So if it's not Huff, another veteran guy would definitely be, great to bring in. But Huff would definitely it'd be nice to see him back for at least one more season. They said, I think this is in regards to Purdy. When we pay him, they better draft good and not going to have a lot to work with because of the money that they're gonna have to pay Purdy, right? So that's why the draft is key, because all these guys are going to be on rookie deals. So they're going to have to do a lot of bulking up of the D-line and O-line through the draft. A little bit will be done through free agency. Some guys on vet minimums and whatnot. But it's not going to be a big splash, I think, unless a big splash would be like trading for DeForest Buckner, who's on an expiring one-year deal. So
a big splash would be trading for a fucking legitimate kicker. I think that's going to happen this season too. I think they're going to actually go out into the market and trade for a kicker.
Justin Tucker is a free agent, isn't he? Maybe.
He is a free agent this season. So who knows? That could be a situation where, if the Ravens feel like he doesn't have it anymore, which it kind of looks that way, right? He's still a much more capable kicker than Jake Moody would be for us. So I would
we'll trade them Jake Moody and a $500 gift card to La Vix for Justin Tucker.
No, I can't do him that dirty. At least let it be El Torito, bro. At least, you know what I'm saying? But they're gonna make some splash moves that are kind of gonna go under the radar, but real fans will know, this is a huge move for the team. I expect this offseason to kind of be similar to the one when they missed the playoffs the last time, which was when they got a couple of key guys in. I think it was the year that they drafted Brandon Ayuk as well. So there's a lot of things that can go right. And the 11th pick is lucky for the Niners. The last time we had it, I think they drafted Anthony Davis as their offensive lineman, and we knew how good he was for many years under the Harbaugh regime. And Patrick Willis was also the 11th overall pick back in 2007. So there's good omens with that pick for sure. I think they're going to do good things, whether they go offense or defense. There's no right or wrong answer, to be honest. Like, they just got to make an impact player. They need someone that can start from day one. And I fully believe that this is the most important draft in John Lynch's tenure for sure. I feel like they're going to change up a lot of things. They're not going to do the things that they normally do in the draft. They're kind of going to go against the grain, which means that we might see picks that we probably didn't see coming at all, which means no running backs, no wide receivers.
We don't need no sexy picks. We need a high quality picks. Get the guys that you need to make this team better. You're good at the skill positions, right? Like we said, you have a handful of wide receivers you are confident in. You have a good running back trio, although who knows what's going to happen with Jordan Mason. There's a good chance that he maybe gets paid by another team out there and the Niners aren't able to keep him, in which case Isaac Guerrero as your number 2 is fine, more than fine. Dan said Moody should have been cut after the Bucs game. Yeah, Moody should have been cut a long time ago. I just don't think the Niners wanted to do anything during the season that dramatic, but I'd be shocked if Moody is back in the offseason. And I don't think they're going to draft a kicker. I think it's just too much pressure to put on a rookie kicker on this team. You need to go get a veteran, whether it's Justin Tucker or you bring back one of the guys that they signed during the offseason or during the season, Matthew Wright, Anders Carlson, right? Bring back a veteran guy who can handle those high pressure situations. Our uncle, this offseason will decide whether this regime stays or not, right? If they do everything right this offseason and then back our contention next year, you'll see Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch around for at least a couple more seasons, probably depending on how the season goes too, but it's definitely a key offseason for them. I like Kansas City secondary coach or for the defensive guy. Yeah. I mean, they're looking at their defensive line coach. So, Spags is somebody they tried to go after last year. I mean, every team in the NFL would love Spags, but it doesn't seem like he's trying to go anywhere. No. He loves the situation he has. And who can blame him, right? He's with the best team in the league right now. So it's tough to kind of say anything there. All right, before we go, we've talked about the 49ers. Let's just talk about the wildcard games this weekend, man. We got some good matchups. Playoffs are starting. And even though our 49ers are not in the playoffs this season, it's going to be nice to watch some playoff football stress-free, not have to worry about the Niners rallying from a 10-point deficit or a 24-point deficit this year. Yeah. So let's just talk about quickly some of these games, and let's make our picks. I want to hear from you guys in the comments too. AFC matchup. Let's start with this one. The Chargers at the Texans. That's the number 5 team Chargers, number 4 team Texans. Texans are the home team here. Who do you got in this one?
I could see this going either way, but the way the Texans have been playing the last month, I think the emotional letdown that they had with Tank Dell going off for the season, obviously, they don't have Stephon Diggs on offense anymore either. I got to go with the Chargers, man. Defense travels. Jim Harbaugh is hungry to show the world again what he can do, in the NFL playoffs. And we know one thing about Harbaugh, anytime he's ever been in the playoffs as an NFL coach, he's been in the championship game. So I expect the Chargers to win this game. It'll be close, but I think in the fourth quarter, the Chargers lock down and they'll take this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Chargers win this one too. The Texans, got off to a pretty good start early in the season. Joe Mixon was dominating for their run game, but the last month or so, he hasn't been as effective as he has before. And part of that is because the Houston passing game isn't what we're used to seeing. And that's like you said, Dell's been out. Diggs obviously lost for the season. So CJ Stroud, definitely had a big sophomore slump this season. I just think the Chargers defensively, they're more in tune, more in sync. And I like Jim Harbaugh to drop a good game plan for this team. And Herbert has played really well this season. I think they have more weapons on offense. J.K. Dobbins is healthy. They don't have a splashy guy, but Ladd McConkey has obviously been playing really well as a rookie. So I think the Chargers win this one too. Yep. Next matchup, Steelers at Ravens. We got a AFC North matchup. This is going to be a good one. I think this is going to be a very physical game.
Yeah, for sure. It'll definitely be physical, but again, this is going to go to the Ravens. They're on a mission this season. Lamar is, arguably the MVP of the league right now as it stands. I don't see a situation where Pittsburgh, can pull this game out. Russell Wilson has kind of regressed over the last couple of weeks. They were 10-3 at one point. People were talking about they could possibly be the number 1 seed in the AFC. They barely made the playoffs. They're 10-7. So the Ravens, man, I think that they're going to win by at least 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, the Steelers did beat them once earlier in the year. It was a close game, 18-16. I think that was the one where Boswell just hit 6 field goals. But the second time around, the Ravens beat them 34-17. And as you just mentioned, the Steelers just haven't looked the same the last month or so of the season. Ravens are coming in hot. There's definitely a lot of pressure on Lamar, I think, this postseason, because as great as he's been in the regular season this year and in years past, he just hasn't been able to do it in the playoffs yet. So there's pressure on him. Although I disagree with what you said. I think Josh Allen is the MVP this season.
I hope so. I like Josh Allen a lot, right? He's a really, really good player. I want him to be MVP, but I feel like they're going to give it to Lamar.
I think there's a case that you could say that Lamar maybe is the offensive player of the year, and maybe Josh Allen wins the MVP.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow should be in the conversation for
He'll get
both.
OPOY.
He might get offensive player of the year, which is going to be crazy because then one of those three guys is going to not get an award, and it's going to be crazy to see which one it is that's left off.
What about Saquon too? He's in the conversation as well.
Saquon had a great season. I mean, 2,000 rushing yards, right? What was maybe over 2,500 scrimmage yards when you look at his passing game too.
Yeah, like 6 touchdowns too. So
it didn't help him that Jalen Hurts vultured a lot of touchdowns for him at the goal line this year. He had 13. I think he would have had 20 plus easily if not for that. But that's just team he plays on. So yeah, Steelers over Ravens. All right, and then Broncos versus the Bills. I think the Bills will win this game, although I do think it might be a little bit closer than people might think.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those situations where going into the fourth quarter might be like a one-score game type of situation. Like Bo Nix is doing just enough, but we know Josh Allen, man. He makes some magic happen with his legs sometimes. So give me the Bills, man. Give me the Bills 10 points.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bills win this one too for sure. All right, NFC matchups real quick, and then we'll get out of here. Packers at the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to win this game. I mean, the Packers, they just lost Christian Watson for the season to a torn ACL, and they were already kind of struggling. They don't have a clear-cut wide receiver one on that team. We know, like I said, Jordan Love, a bit turnover prone. Josh Jacobs has been really good for them this year, but I think the Eagles just more healthier, better on both sides of the ball. They got more weapons on offense when you think about Saquon, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. This is a more experienced team too, so I think the Eagles win.
For sure. I could definitely see that, but I'm going to go the Packers on this one.
Shit.
This is kind of because of how they played the first game of the season down there in Mexico City, or in Brazil, actually, earlier in the year. I think the Packers have what it takes to go on the road and win this game. I feel like that they've lost a lot of close matchups to a lot of the elite teams, specifically in the NFC North. They lost to both Minnesota and Detroit, which were relatively close games both times that they played each other. So I think they're built for it. I think they can go on the road. They have a really, really good defense. Josh Jacobs is no joke this season. He can pound the rock for sure. And they have a pretty decent offensive line. I'm kind of weary about Jalen Hurts because that concussion that he had was pretty serious a couple of weeks ago. I want to see how he bounces back from that. And I know that these guys always have some sort of stupid internal strife when Devontae Smith or
A.J. Brown's being a drama queen.
All right. They always talk about stupid shit on the sidelines. That could pour over into this game. I hope it doesn't. We know Nick Sirianni takes a lot of stupid chances, and it doesn't pay off. Give me the Packers in this one. It's going to be a really, really close game. Probably a field goal.
I don't know. I mean, people are kind of split in the comments here. Dan said if Love is healthy, he likes them. Love is healthy, but like I said, I just think they don't have the weapons that the Eagles do. Eli, I agree with what you said. The Packers, they've looked bad the last few weeks. They lost to the Bears in one of these last final games. Jalen Hurts did, I think, practice today or for the first time. He's probably going to play. Hopefully there's no lingering effects for him of a concussion. I mean, he has to go through protocol to get past the play or cleared to play. So I think he's going to be fine. They got more playmakers on that side. Saquon, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Goddard at tight end. So I just don't think it'll be a close game because, like you said, the Packers are good on both sides of the ball too. Yep. But this game's in Philly. It's a tough place to play in the playoffs on the road. So I think the Eagles are going to win this one. Next matchup, Commanders at Bucks. This is an interesting one. Sunday night football game. It's going to be a good one. Jaden Daniels obviously likely to win the offensive rookie of the year for the NFL. He's been great. And on the other side, Baker Mayfield has been incredible for the Bucks. 40 plus touchdown passes this season. He's been phenomenal. So Tampa Bay's at home in this one. Who do you like?
Man, I really like Baker Mayfield, what he's done this season. He's playing at an elite level. It was nice to see them get Mike Evans at 1,000 yards on Sunday. I was watching that game when that happened. It was pretty sick to see that. But I got to go with the Commanders, man. Jaden Daniels, he's a real deal for sure. The Buccaneers suck at stopping the run, especially mobile quarterbacks. And I feel like Jaden Daniels is going to have a field day. I feel like Dan Quinn, he's probably the second most accomplished coach in the playoffs right now behind Sean McVay, which we're going to get to in a second. But I feel like this is a game that they can go on the road. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the ones that are favored going on the road in this game. I really like the Commanders in this game for sure.
Yeah, I think this game's going to come down to who can get stops at the right time. And on that side of the ball, I do like the Commanders slightly more than I like the Bucks. I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think this could be a shootout game, especially because it's down in Tampa. Like the weather should be fine, right? You don't have to worry about cold weather or anything. This could be a game that we see go over the 60-point mark in over under. I don't know what the over under is set at this game, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. It's going to come down to who can get stops, whichever team makes the least amount of mistakes. I'm with you. I think the Commanders go on the road and upset them, though. Although I would like to see the Bucks win because I want to see Baker continue to make this run that he's been on with the Bucks. So let's see who can get it done. The last game. This is another really good game in the NFC. Monday Night Football game. Minnesota Vikings at the LA Rams. Also, there's a chance that this game could be moved to Arizona because of the fire situation going on right now in LA. So something to monitor, which would be interesting because then it's a neutral site game technically, although it's still closer to the LA area. But Vikings going on the road. We saw them drop that game to the Lions on Sunday Night Football. They finished the season 14-3. Still a really, really good team. Good on both sides of the ball. We talked about Sam Darnold earlier and what he's been doing for this team on offense, right? He played like a top 5 quarterback this season. Yep. They got a lot of weapons on offense. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones have been really good for them this year. But look, that team on the other side, the LA Rams, as we know, they can turn it up at any point. And as much as we hate them, they're an NFC West rival. Sean McVay, man, good coach. Matthew Stafford, great veteran quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback, right? And they got weapons on that side too. Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. And their defense in the last month of the season has been phenomenal. They've been one of the best defenses in terms of points allowed per game over the last month of the season. So what do you think, man? I feel like this game's kind of a toss-up.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a game that's going to be super close going into the fourth quarter. We know what Sean McVay is capable of. He's the only coach in the NFC in the playoffs this year that's been to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. So he's the most accomplished coach in the field right now. Give me the Rams, man. As much as it pains me to say this, bro, they were 1-4 to start the season, and they ended up winning the division, right? So give me the Rams. Matthew Stafford has his offensive line fully healthy. The defense has been a top 10 defense, the second half of the season. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are still super, super elite. Kyren Williams is a really, really good running back. Give me the Rams, man. I think they're going to take this game for sure. It's going to be close. But I'm not a big believer in Sam Darnold after what I saw last Sunday night in Detroit.
Yeah, like Eli just said in the comments, he's still seeing ghosts, right? They drew up a great game plan to get Sam Darnold, rattled in the backfield over there in the pocket. He was missing a lot of throws from start to finish. I mean, missed Justin Jefferson on a touchdown. I think he missed Jordan Addison on one also. And again, that was against a subpar defense, right? The Rams are a veteran team. They're experienced. They're going to drop a good game plan to also get Darnold off of his game. So I think it's going to be a close game. And yeah, I hate to say it, but I think the Rams maybe pull this one out too, especially because they're playing at home. I think they're going to surprise some people, and they're the higher seed, but it's still technically an upset, I feel like, because the Vikings come in at 14-3, even though they're the road team and the higher seed. I feel like the Rams winning would be an upset. I think Sam Darnold, if they could put some pressure on him and make him get, rattled in the pocket, he's going to have some turnovers, be missing throws again. Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings, I think he'll do a good job of keeping the Rams offense in check too. So it could be a one score game that comes down to the wire. And if that's the case, I think I like Stafford to make more plays than Darnold because he's done it before. Yeah, we should write down everyone's picks here. We'll circle back. I'll go through and I'll write down everyone's picks in a doc, and we'll circle back to them next week. As we can continue playoff talk as the postseason goes on. But right now, all right, before we go, everyone in the comments, let us know who's your pick from the NFC, who's your pick from the AFC, and your Super Bowl winner. You go first, Cooter. Who do you like?
For me, anybody but KC, man. Anybody but KC's got to win this shit.
We can all agree with that.
I want the Buffalo Bills to win this one. I feel like they're the most star franchise in the NFL. I feel like they've been in it, for the last 3 or 4 years. They have a superstar quarterback. They have a really good coach. I feel like they're the only team in the AFC right now currently constructed that could probably take down KC. They were the only team in the regular season outside of Denver to beat KC at full strength. So give me the Bills, man. It's going to be Bills versus Lions in the Super Bowl. That's what I'm predicting right now, but give me the Bills.
I would love to see that outcome too. I think that'd be a great Super Bowl between two high-powered teams. I don't want to see Kansas City in the Super Bowl either. Obviously tired of them, but until I see somebody, the Bills have done it, but they're going to have to go on the road to do it this year. I think the Chiefs have to still be the favorite to come out of the AFC just because of what we've seen from them this year. But I do think the Bills can and will beat them. So I'm with you. I think it'll be Bills. I think it'll be the Lions on the other side too. And I want to see Bills get that first one. Dan said Patty's getting number 4. Nah, I swear to God, bro, he better not.
He's not going to get it.
If he three-peats, the conversation in the offseason is going to be wild. He's going to start. I think he's going to start entering that GOAT conversation already.
He's already at that level. People are starting to compare him to Tom Brady already. And can he actually surpass Brady's 7 Super Bowls? Like, that's a legitimate conversation that they're having right now because he's still very young, and he's potentially going to win his 4th Super Bowl if everything goes right for the team this year. But I don't know, man. I think it's a little bit early. If he gets that 3-peat, then we can have that conversation. But let's pump the brakes on that one.
Yeah, look, if we don't have to get into all this right now, but even if Mahomes finishes with like 5, even if he doesn't pass Brady, I think you can make a case that he's the GOAT, given 5 rings, all the talent he has, and this dynasty that they're kind of setting up now in Kansas City. But hopefully that's not the case. And, we see the Bills make a run, or maybe Lamar finally gets over the hump this year. Who knows? We'll see. I do think the Bills have the best chance at any of the AFC teams to knock off KC. So we'll see, man. But like I said, I'm excited for some playoff football, some non-49er playoff football. I can watch a game stress-free, eat some food, and not have to worry about, stressing for 48 or 60 minutes on a Saturday or Sunday. So we'll circle back next week. We'll look at we'll recap these games from Wild Card Weekend, and then we can look ahead to Divisional Weekend next week. But thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you for all the comments. Dan, Art, Uncle, Eli, Randy, everyone who tuned in and has been commenting today. Thank you guys. Please subscribe to the deep dive. Share with all your friends and everybody, and we'll keep you guys updated as the playoffs go on, as we hear more Niners news, and we'll be here next week. And I think we should start getting into some NBA talk. People want to hear about the Dubs a little bit, so we should definitely start. We'll talk about the Warriors a little bit, talk about my Lakers a little bit too. But like I said, thank you guys all for tuning in. Everyone have a great night, and we'll catch you guys next week.
See you guys. Thanks for a great season.